Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in, and we have some good news for you today. Congress passed a funding bill that will end the partial shutdown through September, all except for Department of Homeland Security. The bad news, 21 Republicans broke with President Donald Trump and Speaker Mike Johnson last night in an attempt to defeat the $1.2 trillion spending bill to end the government shutdown. They cited concerns that the legislation did not do enough to advance GOP priorities. We're going to break that down for you and tell you who the 21 GOP congressmen were and let you decide. Federal judge who blocked the Trump administration from deporting 350,000 Haitians has donated more than $38,000 to Democrat campaigns, including the main committee for the former president, Joe Biden, who appointed her and let those migrants in to begin with. President Trump vowed yesterday to personally call NBC Today co-host Savannah Guthrie and offer additional federal assistance following her mother's apparent abduction in Tucson, Arizona. We have some updates on you for that, too. And the lawyer who represented a detransitioner who was awarded $2 million warns this case signals a tipping point. Every doctor should take it seriously, he says.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
So let's start today with what happened in Washington last night. There's multiple layers involved in this. President Trump signed the bill officially ending the partial government shutdown. Did you even realize the government was shut down? That was one of those that I didn't even, had I not read it, had I not been following it, I don't know that I would even have known that the government was shut down partially, but it was. For millions of Americans, I guess maybe that's relief. Federal workers get paid, critical services stay online, the lights stay on, markets calm down, families don't have to wonder if the government is about to slam on the brakes again, all of the above. Now, that's the good news, and it is good news, I guess. Most of the government is funded through September. We won't have to go through this again until then, with the exception of DHS, and we'll get to that in a minute. Now, this was a Trump-backed deal. It was pushed through with Speaker Mike Johnson. It passed narrowly, 217 to 214. 3 votes. It keeps funding flowing. Again, for Department of Defense, Education, Transportation, Health and Human Services, Housing and Urban Development, and it avoids the chaos that comes with a prolonged shutdown that we saw last year. But here's the part Republicans and conservatives need to hear especially. 21 Republicans voted no. Not because they wanted a shutdown, but because they believe Washington missed a moment. And that's where we have to, I guess, give them the benefit of the doubt. And they all had good reasons, or at least they expressed reasons. These lawmakers said that the $1.2 trillion spending bill did not go far enough to advance Republican priorities, especially with the GOP holding the House, the Senate, and the White House. Makes sense, doesn't it? Their concerns were clear. Most of them have been consistent with some of the issues that they had with this. Some of the things they're concerned about, that there's no election integrity provisions, no full-year funding for the Department of Homeland Security because, this is just kicking the can down the road, not even really down the road, because they're going to be revisiting this next week, 10 days from now. And Democrat-requested earmarks are still intact. So those are the problems. Congressman Thomas Massey of Kentucky was very blunt, saying the deal blocked inclusion of the SAVE Act, legislation that would require photo ID to register for federal elections. I have no clue still. I can't wrap my brain around why this is controversial, even among Democrats. From his perspective, protecting election integrity should have been non-negotiable. Others, like Florida's Anna Paulina Luna and Lauren Boebert of Colorado, argued Republicans squandered leverage, especially on border security. Boebert very plainly said Republicans have the trifecta, and DHS should be funded at Trump-level priorities, not kicked down the road with a 2-week extension. That's another key point here. While most of the government is funded, again, Homeland Security is not. This drama is going to continue for the next 10 days. Lawmakers agreed to this short 2-week DHS extension, buying time to negotiate the disagreements. Democrats have been demanding new restrictions, limits on patrols, body camera mandates, which, hey, I'm okay with the body camera. Talked about that yesterday. They don't want ICE agents to be allowed to wear masks, and they want tighter warrant rules. That fight is not over. It's far from over. Republicans who voted against the bill say trusting Democrats to negotiate in good faith later is a risky bet. So who are these 21? Well, let me name them for you. Where's my list? There it is. Representative Andy Biggs, Lauren Boebert, Josh Brecheen, Tim Burkett, Eric Burleson, Kat Kamek, Eli Crane, Byron Donalds, Randy Fine, Brandon Gill, Anna Paulina Luna, Thomas Massey, as I mentioned, Corey Mills, Andy Ogles, Scott Perry, Chip Roy, David Swikert, Keith Self, Victoria Sparks, Greg Stubbe, and the upstate's very own William Timmons from the 4th Congressional District. They all said, we are not taking advantage of the leverage that we have. We should have stood strong. So here's the bottom line. President Trump delivered stability. He kept the government open. That matters. But the Republican conference is clearly split between governing pragmatically and governing aggressively from power. And look, I'm not sure where we head with this, because on the surface, when you read the headline, 21 Republicans voted against the president, they make a point. Voter integrity, we have to get voter integrity. This was a good chance to get that. And on the surface, and if you agree with these 21, we lost a good opportunity here. But maybe Speaker Johnson, maybe the president, maybe they have something planned over these next 10 days that they'll use in trying to come to a decision on Homeland Security. We'll see. We'll see. The voter integrity is very important, and I get that. On to another story here. A federal judge who blocked the Trump administration's deporting 350,000 Haitians. Guess what? This judge has conveniently donated more than 38,000 to Democrat campaigns, including Joe Biden. Now, here's the order in case you missed it. It revokes temporary protected status for the Haitian migrants from D.C. U.S. District Judge Anna Reyes. Biden appointed Reyes to the federal bench in February 2023, 1 month after his administration allowed up to 30,000 Haitians to enter the U.S. every month under a humanitarian parole program. Others entered through the southern border, including several apprehended by Border Patrol agents in Texas. The Biden administration falsely accused agents of whipping those migrants. Remember that? The agents on the horseback? This Uruguay-born federal judge had previously served as a litigation attorney focused on international disputes at a very large law firm and is considered an activist in that arena. Judge Ray's federal election contributions, which were previously exposed by Fox News, show that while at the law firm, she has apparently donated exclusively to Democrat campaigns since 2008. She maxed out donations to Joe Biden for president with two 2,800 contributions in August of 2020. She shelled out $2,700 to Democrat Hillary Clinton's campaign against Donald Trump in 2016. Then California Senator Kamala Harris's campaign also received $4,500 from Judge Ray's during her failed run for the presidential nomination in 2019. So this lady, she spreads the money around. She gave $200 to AOC in 2019, 1 year after her first successful run for Congress. Marino balked at Ray's recent order as amounting to an admission of permanent protected status for all migrants let in from Haiti. In a statement, Marino said, when a Democrat president can create a temporary program and an unelected Democrat judge can unilaterally block a duly elected Republican president from ever undoing it, we do not live in a democracy. This outrageous decision cannot stand. And I can imagine next stop will be the appeals court and then on to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary. DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said, Supreme Court, here we come. Haiti's TPS was granted following an earthquake that took place over 15 years ago. It was never intended to be a de facto amnesty program, yet that's how previous administrations have treated it for decades. This is what is really wrong with this whole scenario. You've got these judges like this person who are just, they go rogue, and you can't tell me this decision was not totally politically motivated. Someone who's given over $38,000 to Democrat political candidates and presidential candidates, she conveniently gets appointed to the U.S. federal bench. Wow. Joey Hudson here. You tried keto, paleo, Weight Watchers, intermittent fasting. You lose weight, then it comes right back. You blame yourself, your willpower, your discipline. But here's the truth. It was never about willpower. There's one thing that determines whether your body burns fat or stores it. And if you don't fix that first, every diet will fail. At PhD Weight Loss, they identify that one thing and they build a plan that works with your body, not against it. And if you call now, you're going to get 2 weeks free in the program, and they'll pay for your food so you can finally see real answers without more trial and error. If you've done the yo-yo dieting and want clarity, call PhD Weight Loss now and mention Joey Hudson. No more guessing, just answers. Call 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900. Say Joey Hudson. That's 864-644-1900. Also find them online at myphdweightloss.com. That's myphdweightloss.com. Do it once and for all. Lose the weight the right way by calling PhD Weight Loss today. Over the past few years, we've talked a lot about the lunacy in this whole transgender culture. And it just drives me insane to hear stories of doctors who have convinced parents to let their 16-year-old girl decide that she's going to have a double mastectomy because she feels like a boy. And we've seen too many of those type cases. And you got to know, and look, I have a great respect for the medical community, for doctors, but we've seen too often just how radical some of these doctors have become. And they literally convince parents that if you don't do this, if you don't let Sarah become little Johnny, she may kill herself. She may commit suicide. Or if you don't let little Johnny become Sarah, he may commit suicide. And that's the tactic that we've seen over and over that has been exposed by some of these radical doctors who've done this. And it's all about money to them. Now, they claim, well, you know, we want the best of health for these young kids. Look, a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old, these young kids should not be making those type of decisions at that age, decisions that will change their life, that changes their bodies for the rest of their life. You can't undo some of this. Well, doctors who are in this field, they need to take note, because we're at a point where the law is the only thing that can heal the harm done by doctors psychologist in the name of gender affirmation, and a court's decision just this past week is setting the stage for that. So here's the story. 22-year-old Fox Varian successfully sued the doctors who conducted her process of transitioning from female to male, claiming negligence. Miss Varian, once again living as a woman, will walk away with $2 million, but of course, she'll never get her breasts back. Her body is changed forever. So yesterday, and this is good news, the American Society of Plastic Surgeons became the first medical group to oppose surgical transition for kids, advising waiting until at least age 19. Ms. Varian's case is a very important milestone. The first time someone is being held to account for churning children through a medical system fueled by ideology rather than medical evidence, rather than basic science. There are at least 28 similar lawsuits headed to trial. You got to know that those doctors are shaking in their white coats right now. Varian's lawyer, Adam Douche, told the New York Post, "My guess is that a lot of themes that came up in her case are pretty consistent through a lot of these cases. Lack of collaboration, lack of proper training and or experience." He said, "Knowing now that a jury will feel comfortable holding doctors accountable for this is something I think every doctor should take seriously." And he's right. The case is a profound indictment of a medical machine that is all about profit and has profited from youth suffering and failed to question whether children should be making profound decisions about their bodies before they can legally drink a beer or before they can get a tattoo. Think about that. Now, she was 16 years old. Miss Varian was. She had been identifying as a boy, cycling through a cacophony of names, including Isabella, Gabrielle, Rowan. For less than a year, when Dr. Simon Chin, who practices plastic surgery in Westchester, New York, removed her healthy breast in 2019. This was allowed because her lawyers claimed in court psychologist Kenneth Einhorn, quote, drove the train for her transition. In other words, he convinced the parents that this was a necessity. Lawyers argued at the Westchester County Supreme Court that Varian psychologist and surgeon failed to follow standards of care that would have saved her from trauma and regrettable surgery. The lawyer said this was not about ideology. This case was about medical malpractice. Every patient is entitled to get care that is competent and standards-based. Now, Miss Varian's lawyers allege that Kenneth Einhorn put the idea in Fox's head to transition after the girl expressed feelings of gender dysphoria. Claire Deacon, her mother, said this man was just so emphatic and pushing that I felt like there was no good decision. She said, I think it was a scare tactic. I don't believe it was malice. I think he believed what he was saying, but he was very, very wrong. And he convinced them that their daughter would potentially commit suicide if they did not allow him to proceed. Ms. Deacon said that although she was opposed to the surgery, she was intimidated. That she was intimidated into consenting by the threat of her daughter committing suicide. Now, Ms. Varian's lawyers allege that a host of other confounding mental health issues were not addressed during this process. She evidently had social phobia, anxiety, depression, and autism. They didn't try to treat those. They rushed to the surgery. They rushed to try to convince her that if you transition, everything's going to be okay. Dr. Chen, meanwhile, was accused of meeting Varian just twice before her mastectomy, 30 minutes each time. So this young lady's making a life-changing decision, and she's basically spent an hour with this doctor, an hour. The attorney said these are very complex cases, and I think that doctors who are wading into this without the training and expertise, just like in any other area of medicine, can get themselves in trouble. The attorney said that he thinks his client is grateful for having the opportunity to come to court and prove that these doctors did not live up to the standard of care. Varian detransitioned 3 years later, but can never undo what was done to her body. She told the jury, as they were wrapping up the court proceedings, "It's so hard to face that that you're disfigured for life. No amount of reconstruction is ever going to bring back what I lost." The jury's decision should send a cold chill down the spine of any doctor who has casually prescribed life-changing medical intervention when children were presented to them with psychological distress related to their gender. This is the first of, I'll bet, many, many cases to come. I want you to think about something with me here for a minute. If I told Americans 10 years ago that in these United States of America, private citizens would be standing in the middle of public roads, stopping cars, questioning drivers, checking license plates, and trying to identify federal law enforcement officers, you'd probably laugh me out of the room, wouldn't you? And yet, here we are. Just when you think that the idiots in Minneapolis can't take it a step further, that is happening right now in Minneapolis. Anti-ICE agitators, that's the buzzword now, they're agitators, protesters, idiots, whatever you want to call them. But these anti-ICE agitators, not police officers, not city officials, not anybody elected or given authority by the voters, set up what can only be described as a makeshift street checkpoint. They have traffic cones. They've got barricades made of material, from out of their backyard, cardboard boxes. They have people in masks standing in the road, stopping cars as they come through. Now, remember, these are the people who oppose ICE having masks on, but they're wearing masks out there as they're stopping their fellow Minneapolis citizens and questioning them. And then, and this is the key part, they ask drivers, "Are you ICE? Are you an ICE agent? Are you a federal officer?" Now, think about that for a second. This has gone beyond protesting. This isn't free speech. This isn't holding a sign on a sidewalk saying ICE out of here or anti-ICE or whatever. This is impersonating authority, interfering with federal law enforcement operations on a public street and just a public nuisance. I don't know what I would do. I don't know how I would react if I pulled up to one of these checkpoints and they demand that I tell them who I am, show them my license, show them my registration before they'd let me through a place in my own city. I probably would go berserk. In one video, an agitator dressed in all black, face covered, walks up to a stopped vehicle and tells the driver, and I'm quoting here, "It looks like in our system that your plates come up as an ICE plate." Our system? What exactly system are they referencing here? Since when do mask agitators, protesters, whatever you want to call them, have systems to run license plates? They then tell the driver, "That doesn't seem like it's the case. We'll take you off the list," when the driver says, "No, I'm not ICE." And they're typing this into something. They ask for his name. Someone nearby comments on the driver's ethnicity, pointing out that this particular driver is Somalian. So I guess they think that ICE has started hiring Somalians to do enforcement. Now, and all of this is happening in broad daylight, by the way, right in downtown Minneapolis, right in the middle of a residential neighborhood at a four-way stop. So if you lived in that neighborhood, you'd have to go through their so-called checkpoint to get to your home. Now, again, I ask you, what would you do? What would your reaction be? Let's be very clear here about this. This is impersonating a law enforcement officer. They don't have the right to ask anybody to identify themselves. If the politics were reversed, every cable news network would be calling it domestic extremism, domestic terrorism. They'd be out there documenting every car they stopped. And the crazy thing is, until some of the conservative media actually called their attention to it, the city of Minneapolis was allowing it to happen. Now, the video was captured by journalist Jorge Ventura, who did exactly what journalists are supposed to do. He asked questions. When they asked him a question, he asked them a question. He pressed them. What database are you using? Whose system is this? Who's running these plates? Who gave you the authority to stop vehicles? The answer was basically, just trust us. Trust us. We're doing the right thing here. Now, they claimed ICE agents were renting vehicles. They claimed that the neighbors that they were set up their operations supported them. They admitted they were posting these encounters online as well. And here's the part that should make everybody stop and think for a minute. Again, this was in broad daylight. This was on a public roadway. It wasn't private property. They weren't over on the sidewalk. They were in the middle of the road stopping traffic. You could not go by them until you talked to them. And there was no police officers anywhere to be seen. Minneapolis police was nowhere. None. So for however long this went on, the rule of law simply stepped aside. Eventually now, the city says Public Works and the Minneapolis Police Department cleared the barricades for public safety. No word on arrest. No word on that these idiots were charged. Just clean it up and move along. Tell them to go home. Take their whistles and go home. But let's look at that a little bit closer. This isn't about one street in Minneapolis, is it? This is about what happens when political leaders, activist groups, media outlets normalize hostility toward law enforcement, especially federal law enforcement, especially ICE, especially Border Patrol. Rather than just telling them you got to pack up your barricade and go home, they should have been arrested. They should have been hauled off, because I'm sure they just probably moved down the road and set up in another place. When politicians repeatedly say ICE is illegitimate, when you have your mayor and your governors, your representatives in Congress and your U.S. senators saying that ICE is illegitimate, and to a degree, every Democrat in the U.S. Congress is saying that by not funding DHS right now, by kicking the can down on these spending bills down the road for another 10 days. When activists label agents as villains, when mobs feel emboldened to track officers, because that's what they were saying they were doing. Basically, their system, as it was explained in the video, here's what their system was. If they felt like you weren't really ICE, then they put your license plate in their system and cleared you, so that if they pulled you up in their system again, they would know you weren't ICE. Now, I'd love to know what would have happened if somebody had pulled up and they said that they were ICE. What were they going to do to them? Were they going to arrest ICE? Wow. Look, you don't get peaceful protest in a situation like this. This is like street justice. Remember the context here. This is happening after 2 fatal encounters involving federal enforcement in Minnesota. Incidents that sparked outrage, the protests, the nonstop chaos, the nonstop rhetoric, the anti-ICE rhetoric that we're hearing. But instead of letting investigations play out, instead of demanding accountability through the courts and through the rule of law, you get masked activists deciding that they get to identify who's allowed to drive down that particular street. Again, that's not a peaceful protest. That's not activism. That's chaos. Here's the uncomfortable truth that officials in Minnesota don't want to admit. If a group of conservatives, again, set up roadblocks to, quote, check cars for government affiliation, if they ask drivers for names, if they ran plates through some mysterious database, the response would be immediate. Minneapolis police would be arresting them. There'd be wall-to-wall media coverage, emergency press conferences everywhere. Governor Tim Walz would have been there. But again, because this was wrapped in an anti-ICE protest, anti-ICE language, it gets treated like community engagement. Oh, these are just some community activists out there. Look, no matter what you think about immigration policy, you cannot allow mobs to interfere with federal law enforcement. You cannot allow mobs to set up a roadblock in your city and demand that people identify themselves. Once that line is crossed, the system doesn't hold, because today it's ICE, tomorrow it's the FBI or ATF or U.S. Marshals or anyone else activists decide they don't like, or they don't like the way that they're enforcing the law. And this has nothing to do really about the left versus the right or Democrats versus Republicans, or it shouldn't. It actually does, but it shouldn't. Everybody, regardless of your political affiliation, this should scare you. This is about whether the United States is governed by laws or by whoever shows up with the cones and the barricades and the whistles. And the silence from too many elected officials tells you everything you need to know, because deep down, they know this is dangerous, but they're too scared to say it. They're cowards. They're not going to step up and protect their communities. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. President Trump said yesterday that he is going to personally call NBC Today co-host Savannah Guthrie and offer additional federal assistance following her mother's apparent abduction in Tucson, Arizona. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, last seen at her home at around 9:30 p.m. Saturday evening, was reported missing by her family around noon on Sunday. While officials did not immediately elaborate on the circumstances of her disappearance, they said that they believe Nancy Guthrie was either kidnapped or abducted, noted that blood was found outside the home. Now, during a question and answer session in the Oval Office yesterday, the president said he's considering sending additional federal agents to assist with the investigation. His quote was, "I think it's terrible. I'm going to call Savannah Guthrie later on. I think it's a terrible thing, very unusual situation, but we're going to find out." Now, despite the pair showdown in the 2020 NBC Town Hall, remember that? Trump added, "I always got along very good with Savannah." Now, during this particular Miami Town Hall, Ms. Guthrie pressed Trump on his administration's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and his social media reposts questioning Osama's bin Laden's death. At one point, she accused the president or then candidate Donald Trump of, quote, sending a lie to his followers, comparing him to someone's crazy uncle. You remember that? I was there. I happened to be at that particular debate in Miami that year. Now, and with that, President Trump is saying, hey, I'm going to do the right thing. We need to help. We need to find this woman. Now, the Pima County Sheriff's Office and FBI continue to investigate the disappearance. Officials say that they are aware of reports of a possible ransom note. The Sheriff's Office wrote in a statement, we are aware of reports circulating about possible ransom notes regarding the investigation into Nancy Guthrie. Anything that comes in goes directly to our detectives who are coordinating with the FBI. Now, news outlets TMZ and KOLD 13 News announced yesterday they received unverified ransom notes demanding money for Nancy Guthrie's return. The note received by TMZ reportedly demanded millions in Bitcoin cryptocurrency, with the outlet verifying the Bitcoin address was a real address. TMZ said the letter, which was sent to authorities, included unrelated details about her disappearance and had a deadline. So we don't know if that's and the FBI has not confirmed that this was a legitimate ransom demand, but I guess we'll see. Look, again, I'm not a fan of Savannah Guthrie's, but I would not want anyone's mother to be treated like this, to be abducted, and hopefully she is safe somewhere. They're taking care of her, and she'll be returned unharmed to her family. American taxpayers may get some relief in property taxes in the future, as at least 5 states are currently considering eliminating property taxes altogether. This according to an article in the New York Post. This could force states and localities to turn to other sources to fund key public services. Now, I love the idea of eliminating property taxes, but you always got to understand that, and it's easy to say, well, let's do away with property taxes, but you got to replace that revenue somehow if we're going to continue with the government services that we currently get. Now, Realtor.com did an analysis, and they broke down the effort to eliminate property taxes in 5 states, noting that some of the proposals are more fully developed than others in terms of finding a replacement for that lost tax revenue. For example, they talk about North Dakota. North Dakota's Republican Governor Kelly Armstrong has proposed using about $483 million from the state's general fund, along with future earnings from the state's oil tax savings account, to offset property tax cuts. Not saying that they'll totally eliminate them, but will cut them in some way. Georgia, they too have a couple of proposals. State lawmakers would eliminate most property taxes by 2032, with the effort starting with a $1 billion expenditure by the state government to lower current property taxes. It would also hike property tax exemptions for primary residences from $5,000 to $150,000. We have a similar proposal like that in the South Carolina legislature. After reading this, I shared this with Representative John McCravey and Representative Mike Burns, who both have expressed support for bills that are currently being considered in the General Assembly. And there's multiple. Representative Burns responded there are 4 or 5 different bills. I haven't had a chance to really look at them yet. But I know that Representative McCravey's idea is to eliminate or at least reduce property taxes for seniors. And Government Master in his State of the State suggested that we do something similar to that. There's seems to be a lot of support to take that approach to it. Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, he's pressed lawmakers to get behind one package that the state can put before Florida voters. There'd be a referendum to illustrate the challenges with replacing lost property tax revenue. An analysis by the Tax Foundation, looking particularly at Florida, found that replacing lost property tax revenue with higher sales taxes would require hiking the sales tax rate from an average of 7% to 15%. Again, this is what Florida is considering, that they'd go to all sales tax. Now, there's an argument to be made there that you have a lot of tourists coming into Florida, and that the tourists would be paying a bigger burden or bigger part of that sales tax than residents. Texas is looking at something too. Republican Governor Greg Abbott seeking to eliminate school property taxes following the enactment of several measures aimed at easing property tax burdens in recent years. Now, that would be interesting there, is to look at maybe, let's say you're a senior, or let's say anybody, you don't have kids in schools, the biggest part of your property tax bill goes to the schools. Maybe there's some type of balance there that people who don't have kids in schools don't pay quite as much. I don't know. Indiana's looking at something too. Indiana has a bill that would abolish taxes on tangible property after December 31st of this year, 2026. It would also eliminate property taxes entirely by 2027. There's nothing in the article from Realtor.com or the New York Post that says how Indiana plans to replace that revenue. But again, it's got to come from somewhere. Back last year, I was moderating a forum over in Oconee County. I asked the question of then Amanda Brock, who was the Oconee County administrator. What do you think about the idea of eliminating property taxes? And she looked at me like I should be committed or something, like I was just completely nuts, and basically said, never going to work. Not, can't do it. Now, I guess the South Carolina legislature has a different idea of how to make that work. We'll see. But hey, if you like the idea of not paying property taxes or at least reducing your property tax burden, reach out to your elected officials, regardless of where you live. Find your state house member, your state senator, let them know that you support the idea of eliminating property taxes or at least reducing them. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.